Greetings and salutations, Dota fans. That is I, Badger, back for another session of Badger's Briefings. Today, I'm going to be talking about Tundra Esports TI-11 win and putting it in historical context versus other dominant TI runs. So to start, we go back to TI-1, where we have Na'Vi, of course. They end up winning TI. They have an unbelievably dominant run. They go 10-1. I covered this in my TI-1 retrospective. Though it was TI-1, certainly the least competitive of the TIs. Now we move into TI-2, which will be my my next video. It'll be a TI-2 retrospective. There were, two dominant-looking teams. There was LGD and there was IG. IG went 13-1 in groups. LGD went 14-0. IG ended up losing some games in playoffs, including a series to Na'Vi pretty early on in winners semis. LGD, however, looked even more dominance. They went into winners finals with an 18-0 record. They play Na'Vi. They beat Na'Vi game 1. They're 19-0. It's looking like it could be a truly dominant LGD run. And then they proceed to drop 4 of the next 5 games. They lose to Na'Vi 2-1. They lose to IG 2-1. What can you do? We go into TI-3, which is another one of the really all-time dominant runs by Alliance. Alliance come very close to having the most dominant TI run ever. They go undefeated in the group stage 14-0. And in bracket play, it's looking a lot like they're going to win TI in this truly beat-down fashion. They beat LGD 2-0. They played Team DK. Team DK gets 1 win on top of the legendary Burning Anti-Mage, but other than that, at this point, Alliance are now 18-1 going into winners finals. They play Na'Vi, and it's an utter and complete beatdown, absolute slaughter. Alliance utterly and completely embarrassed Na'Vi in winners finals. They're 20 wins, 1 loss going into grand finals. In game 1 of the grand finals, looks like it's going to be the exact same story. They absolutely demolished Na'Vi in game 1. I think it was like a 15-minute loss. They're now 21-1. And over the next 4 games, ends up being a 2-2 split, which means Alliance end the tournament at a 23-3 record. So not as dominant as they were looking going into grand finals, but still extraordinarily dominant tournament run by Alliance, one of the most dominant ever. And actually, I'm going to discuss them versus Tundra later on. I think it's them, this TI3 Alliance team, the TI1 Na'Vi, and then the most recent Tundra, who are the 3 most dominant runs ever relative to the field. But move on to TI4, the eventual champions Newbie actually have a very rough early start to the tournaments. They go 7-8 in the group stage. They actually end up being 1 tiebreaker loss away from potentially not even making it out of the groups. If they had lost 1 more game in groups as well, they would not even be able to go into tiebreakers. So their run early on was very tenuous. They easily could have went out, like bottom 6, not even made the next stage of the playoffs. Though they proceed to then go on a bit of a tear. End up going through phase 3, which is like this weird ladder stage. They then go on to playoffs, end up playing pretty well in playoffs, obviously. They drop 2 games in top 8. Well, it was a weird playoff format. The team that was the most dominant in the group stage was Vici Gaming, who really redefined what the meta was supposed to be at the tournaments. A lot of people went into TI4 with the perception that was going to be, very slow games. Naga, Tinker, these are sort of heroes that everyone thought was going to be good. And Vici Gaming took that idea and completely threw it out the window. They said, no. We're going to play Lone Druid, Shaman, Furion, play it fast, run it down. And these teams who were expecting, buy Midases and play, 40, 50, 60-minute games, we're losing in 12 minutes. It's like, oh, well then, what are we supposed to do at this point? We have to shift it up. But ultimately, Vici ended up losing in winners semis to Newbie, and also lost grand finals to Newbie in a 3-1 loss. It was actually fairly one-sided in favor of Newbie, but We move into TI5, a tournament that was ultimately won by Evil Geniuses. They looked pretty good in group stage. They tied for first place in their group with CDEC, C-Deck Gaming. Both those teams ended up making winners finals, though EG ended up losing in winners finals, and that kind of throws your dominant run out the window. Over in the other group, the best team in the group stage, best record 12-2, was LGD. And going into winners semis, they were looking real good. At that point, they were 14-3 going to winners semis, but they also lost to CDC. Ended up dropping out third place in losers finals to EG, if memory serves. But we then move into TI6, which was a very dominant playoff run by Wings Gaming, but the group stage was a lot more shaky. They went 8-6 in the group stage, which was good enough to make it into the winners bracket, but again, dropping 6 games in groups is not ideal. They go into playoffs. They lose 2 games total in playoffs. Really great playoff run. They lose 1 game to Digital Chaos in the first round winners. They beat MVP Phoenix 2-0. They beat Evil Geniuses 2-0, and they take the grand finals against Digital Chaos in the rematch 3-1. So again, very dominant playoff run by Wings, but it was an 8-loss tournament, so you compare it to Tundra, who have a good bit less losses later on, and you say, well, this Wings run is not as dominant as what Tundra ended up doing at TI11. We move into TI7. There really wasn't any truly dominant team at TI7, with the exception of LGD Forever Young. Liquid actually end up with the best record of their group in Group A, though they will drop in round 1 of winners to losers bracket. They have a number of tight series throughout the losers run. They have to claw and earn their way back to the grand finals to win the tournaments. They nearly lost to Secrets to get 9th place. They nearly lost to Virtus Pro to get 5th place. I mean, they came real close to things not going well there for the side of Team Liquid. I mean, they really had to fight as well against LGD Forever Young. But speaking of LGD Forever Young, that was the team that was the best team in the group stage. They went 14-2 in Group B. They were 3 points ahead of any other team in their group. And in playoffs, they were looking extremely good as well. They went 4-0 in playoffs going into winners finals. So at that point, they are 18-2. But then they proceed to lose the next 2 series, 2-1, 2-1 to Newbie and Liquid. Their dominant run gets ended. We move into TI8s, and there wasn't really any truly dominant-looking team at TI8s. I mean, the 2 best teams in the group stage were Team Liquid and Evil Geniuses, who went 13-3 in Group A. BGJ Storm ended up going 12-4 in Group B. The BGJ Storm, this is basically the Yawar team, the team that would basically become Quincy Crew later on, but didn't have Quinn Callahan quite yet. They go on to get 7th, losing to OG in the playoffs, but looking at EG and Liquid, neither of them go on to win this tournament. EG end up making it to winners semis, where they play OG, the later tournament champions, and they lose. They proceed to get 3rd place at this tournament. Liquid play LGD in the other winners semis. They go on to lose that, and then lose to EG in losers semis. OG, the tournament champion, they end up having a very rough group stage compared to teams like Liquid and EG. They go 9-7 in the group stage. Yeah, they go 9-7 in the group stage, and they have to, go through a hypothetically very hard playoff brackets. But they beat BGJ Storm, they beat EG 2-1, they beat LGD, and that was a big win there, beating LGD. Of course, they beat LGD 2-1, and they had a rematch in the grand finals against LGD, where they win that 3-2. Great showing from OG, but it's certainly tenuous if you're playing a 5-game grand finals and playing a lot of lots of good number of games there at that tournament. OG's really more dominant TI run was their TI9 run. They go into this as defending champions, and at this point, no team had ever gone back to back at TI. OG end up winning their group. They go 14-2 in the group stage. They are the best team in their group. The only other team that's comparable would be the Group A champions, LGD, who go 13-3. We then go into our good friend, the bracket stage, and both of these teams actually seem to be on a course to meet each other in the playoffs. LGD dispatched their first two opponents, Virtus Pro and Vici, 2-0, 2-0. So at that point, they are 17-3. OG, however, actually have a hiccup in their playoff run. They beat down Newbie in the first round, but then they go and play Evil Geniuses. And EG actually come close to taking that series. They end up winning game 1 against OG. So OG are back against the wall, need to win 2 to move on, and they end up winning the 2 to move on. Then we have this OG-LGD matchup, the two most dominant teams of the tournament. Both of these teams only had lost 3 games at this point. So there's a lot of anticipation where you're seeing this 18-3 OG team play this 17-3 LGD team. And LGD end up taking game 1. Again, it's OG back against the wall, and they have to win the next 2 games. They win the next 2 games. Good stuff there from OG. So again, 2 close calls from OG and 2 from playoff series. But they take them both, and they go on to play Team Liquid, who go on a bit of a losers run. They had to go all the way from round 1 losers to even get to the grand finals, and then in the grand finals, OG, they make fairly quick work of OG. I mean, they actually end up winning game 1 against OG. Then OG win the next 3 games in a row: game 2, game 3, game 4. Beat. OG win that fairly dominant fashion. They drop 5 games at the tournament, which is actually the exact same number that Tundra end up losing at TI11. Though OG had 2 very close calls in their series, so that is something to keep in mind. We then move on to TI11 or TI10 of 2021. This is the TI that Team Spirit ended up winning, but the most dominant team at this tournament for most of it was LGD. LGD were really good, believe it or not. They went 15-1 in the groups. They proceed to lose 1 game in their winners bracket run in playoffs. They beat T1 2-0. They beat Virtus Pro 2-0. They beat Team Secret 2-0. So they are, much like at TI2, at the doorstep of being this truly dominant champion team. At TI2, they end up going from, undefeated 19-0 to losing in heartbreaking fashion twice in a row. This time, LGD do not lose in heartbreaking fashion twice in a row, but they still end up losing in heartbreaking fashion. It's an unfortunate moment there where this, 21-win, 2-loss team goes into grand finals up against Team Spirit, and Team Spirit had, only gone 10-6 in groups. They lost to IG in first round winners. They have to go through this losers run, and LGD, the presumptive favorites, fall 3-2 to Team Spirit. And it looked briefly like Team Spirit are going to absolutely beat the brakes off of the tournament favorites. They end up winning games 1 and 2 of the grand finals. It seemed like LGD, this team who had only dropped 2 games up to this point, might just lose 3-0. They lost 2 games immediately. They end up winning 3 and 4 to bring it to a decisive game 5, where Spirit end up clutching it out there, where a lot of people thought from the draft alone that LGD would end up winning game 5, and if they had still won this tournament, it wouldn't have been as dominant as it looked going into grand finals, but it still would have been dominant enough. You look at that record, and it's comparable to the TI3 Alliance team, where at that point, if you're LGD, you are 24-4, I believe, which is, once again, very high win rate. Close call in the grand finals, but you'd say, yeah, this is a good win. Unfortunately for them, did not happen. Spirit clutch it out. They win it out. And then we head into TI11, the most recent TI. Tundra Esports don't have as dominant as a group stage showing as many of the other teams in this video. Right now, there's been a number of teams that went undefeated in groups, or had 1 loss, 2 loss group stages. I mean, LGD at TI2 undefeated, Alliance at TI3 undefeated, a team like OG at TI9 2 losses in groups, or LGD at TI10 1 loss in groups. Tundra had 4 losses in the group stage. They went 14-2 which was good enough to get first place in Group B. But it's in the playoffs where Tundra really, and I do mean really, pop off. They end up going on this playoff run where they drop 1 game total. And they do this in an era in which there's more parity now than there ever has been in Dota history. They start their playoff run up against OG, who at this point had won a major this year. They won the Stockholm Major. They had gotten 4th place at Arlington. Many people said this OG team, very good. Looked a little bit shaky in the group stages, but this is an organization with a lot of pedigree. And Tundra utterly and completely embarrass OG. These were 2, very dominant showings from Tundra, where ordinarily you'd say, well, this is a team where OG often do well in the laning phase. They often have strong showings on Amar. They often are able to maneuver in situations that are favorable for them. Tundra say, no, you are not doing that. We are going to beat you down early. We're going to beat you down often. And they just did not give OG a chance. They sent OG to losers right away. They then go on to play Team Aster, who at this point were the only Chinese team remaining in the winners' brackets. And Aster had just come off a 2-0 victory over Team Liquid, who would end up making top 3 at this tournament, were, at this point in very great form, and Aster beat them. So at that point, if you're Tundra, you say, well, maybe this Aster team can actually create a very competitive series. And it was more competitive than the OG series, but Tundra fairly comfortably win it 2-0. Neither game was too particularly heavy of a beatdown, but neither were that uncomfortable for Tundra either. So we end up moving into winners finals, a date with Team Secrets. Tundra actually ended up playing Secret already in the group stages tournaments. They beat Secret 2-0, and we get this rematch of a Group B matchup. And much like in the group stage, Tundra proves to be the better team. And keep in mind, in the group stage, these games of Tundra over Secret were like 20-minute games. They were not close games. Tundra really won it early and just kept the foot on the gas and beat up Secret. And it was not necessarily as close initially, but Tundra were in the position where they could have easily taken on our 2-0. The really close game of the series was Game 1, a game that went to 67 minutes. Tundra had to earn that win. But then going into Game 2, it was looking a lot like it would be a 2-0. Tundra had taken this significant lead in the mid-game. It was looking a lot like it would be a 2-0. They end up throwing it away a bit. Secret bring it to a decisive Game 3. And then in Game 3, Tundra, they do not throw away the lead. Unlike Game 2, it was a similar situation in Game 3 where Tundra got off to this, fairly significant mid-game lead. And this time they did not throw it away. They beat Secret 2-1. They go to Grand Finals. So at this point, Tundra had a pretty good showing. They were 20 wins and 5 losses. Not the best record ever going into a Grand Finals, but again, this already puts them in the same company as teams like, TI9's OG, where it's like, oh, this team is one of the more dominant TI winners ever if they end up winning it. But the fashion in which they won the Grand Finals really cemented this as a historical run for Tundra. I remember as a fan, I was really hoping that Team Liquid would win the losers finals, mostly to create a different matchup, because at this point we had seen Tundra play Secret twice. One series was not close in the slightest, being the group stage series. Winners finals was better, but Tundra proved the better team in that one. And it's like, alright, do we really want to see, Secret Tundra, round 3? Not really. Liquid and Tundra had not played this tournament. They were in other groups, and they did not play each other in playoffs, thanks to mostly Team Aster beating Liquid. So it's like, alright, well, this time, Liquid, they seem inspired. They're on a loser's run. They already got the run back versus Team Aster. They got revenge for winners. Maybe you'll see a Liquid Tundra Grand Finals instead. In a very great series, Secret end up winning it 2-1 over Team Liquid, which sets up the rematch between Team Spirit and Tundra Esports. And, well, it was not a particularly good grand finals. It was 3-0. There have only been, 2 TI finals that have ever been 3-0. It's in the conversation of the most dominant finals wins ever. Wasn't a particularly close series. All 3 games were Tundra wins. And they were Tundra wins as well, where they gave Secret what were considered some of the best heroes in the meta. Leshrac was probably the hero of the tournaments. They gave Secret Leshrac all 3 games. Marcy was, again, one of these really standout heroes in the tournament as well. They even gave Secret Marcy plus Leshrac in one of the games. It did not matter. So despite having Leshrac Enigma 1 game, Leshrac another game, Leshrac Marcy a 3rd game, they still lost all 3 games to Tundra. The games felt like they were in Tundra's control for much of the entire finals. As a result, they take the tournament. They end up going with a final record of 23 wins and 5 losses. An utterly and completely dominant run. This is one of those things, too, where people were saying all tournament about the new level of parity in Dota. And it was true. I mean, we had seen a number of teams that would traditionally, bomb out in the group stage or, be walkovers in the bracket stage, perhaps. Instead, it was very competitive. There was no necessarily one team that stood out as, this team was just awful or this team didn't belong here. No, every team was competitive. And in this extraordinarily competitive environment, Tundra were head and shoulders above every other team at the tournaments. And that's what was so impressive. Is, like, say if you look at a team like Alliance at TI3, you could say, well, there are teams like MUFC at this tournament who really didn't belong. I mean, MUFC literally did not win a single game for a reason. They were just not a very good team. The same applies even more so to Na'Vi at TI1, where sure, they went 10-1, but it was TI1. Half the teams there probably didn't really belong. Teams didn't understand the game as much. It was certainly the least competitive TI. Tundra were at the most competitive TI, and they just beat the brakes off of everyone in playoffs. They had the same number of losses as OG at TI9, but the fashion in which Tundra won was on the back of a dominant playoff run, which I think is a bit more impressive than what OG did, where OG had a better group stage performance than Tundra, but their playoffs were a lot more competitive. They nearly had lost the series to EG. They had nearly lost the series to LGD. They had to play a game down in both those series to win the tournaments. Tundra, at no point, were really back against the wall in the playoffs. The closest they ever got was that winners finals series against Team Secret. And hypothetically, we could be in a world where that epic game 1 goes Secret's way, and then that game 2 ended up going to Secret as well. On the flip side, we also could live in a reality where Tundra don't throw away their lead in game 2, and they go undefeated in playoffs. So, I would consider this Tundra run easily top 4 in terms of dominance ever. I think given the context of the era we're in, I consider it the most dominant TI run ever. And this is very impressive what this team ended up doing. So, I would be very shocked if IceFrog looks at what happened and says, you know what, I'm going to let the game be the same. Because it seems like Tundra have solved Dota. Where, just for context, after TI3, after that extraordinarily dominant run by Alliance, IceFrog stepped in and said, alright, I'm going to just dismantle everything Alliance did. A lot of the heroes that Alliance played got nerfed. Heroes like Chen and Io, for example, which were huge Alliance mainstays, got nerfed. A lot of what Alliance did as well, though, was understanding the economy of the era extraordinarily well. Ake and EGM, Alliance support players, were almost always more farmed than their opponents. So they would utilize the observers and sentries of the era to really prevent the opponents from smoke ganking and really getting pressure applied from, say, a mid laner to gank. Well, they end up changing Smoke of Deceit after the tournaments. Now, before, if you had a Sentry Ward, you could see a smoke. Afterwards, you could not see a smoke anymore, so they made smokes more powerful. On top of that, they made it easier to get gold across the map. Before, it was like, Aki and EGM, they would be farmed, and all these art supports would be extraordinarily poor. You would see these heroes have, like, 2k net worth at minute 25, and that was not that irregular. Well, now there's more passive gold, there's more active gold across the map, they increased assist gold. They made it a lot easier to get money in 6.79 compared to 6.78s. So it was a very conscious decision to basically take everything Alliance did and nerf it. I wouldn't be too shocked if Tundra also get a very similar treatment, where it's like, alright, Tundra, you like these heroes like, Visage, you like your Wraith Pact item. Well, what if we just instead completely and utterly just demolished Wraith Pact as an item? Because obviously Wraith Pact was a really great item at this tournament, but there's no team that utilized Wraith Pact as well as Tundra. And it's very likely that Wraith Pact is going to get dumpster nerfed or reworked in the next patch, because it's just a really good item. I wouldn't be too shocked as well if creep redirects are looked at. Obviously, a lot of teams are using creep redirects, especially on force supports in the laning phase. But Tundra were the best team at utilizing creep redirects. We even saw for a while 33 was using a courier to aggro a wave. Not quite sure what will be done about it, but it's likely that something could be done there as well. And again, Tundra also were just playing the macro level of the economy and the map better than everyone else. So it wouldn't be too shocking if the map was reworked, which would be an indirect nerf to Tundra, as they had the best understanding of the current map. So this is what happens when you have, these really truly dominant TI runs, is you look at like what the special sauce was to achieve that dominant run, and you just kind of just take it and you remove it from the game, and you basically nerf the team either directly or indirectly. So it'll be fun to see with the next, super major balance patch what's going to happen, because if 7.33 is anything like 6.79, then Tundra are going to get nerfed very heavily in the next big balance patch. That is it for today, though. It was fun, though, to go into Tundra's TI11 dominant run and put it into context with some of the other dominant TI runs and almost dominant TI runs of Dota history. My name is Banjer. I'll be back with my TI2 retrospective very soon. That's going to be a long one. That's going to be a fun one as well, of course. I have more stuff on my YouTube. Check it out somewhere else, I'm sure, below. I have a Twitter, I have a Twitch. They're both on the screen, and they'll be in the description as well. As always, thank you for watching, and have a great day.